What is up, everyone? I'm MrThumb. That is Clyde. And we're coming at you with another stream today. Today we're going to do a little bit of React content. I know, fucking typical streamer. Today we're going to be reacting to a little video called Is Monster Hunter Getting Easier by a creator called Blue. And I feel like I've heard this chimed about here and there forever now. Pretty much since World dropped, and probably before that. I was out of the Monster Hunter community for a while. But yeah, it sounds like I'm kind of curious to hear what this creator's got to say about it and where they're gonna take it. So without further ado, let's see here. We're gonna turn off our music, bring in the video. Ooh. Get right to it.
The Western Monster Hunter community is a magical place, where almost any question you've ever had about the series has probably already been asked at some point or another. Though most of these questions tend to focus more on gameplay-related concerns, one will inevitably stumble across broader, more thought-provoking questions, such as, why isn't Guildmarm real and also my wife? How do they get the milk for Kirin butter? Should Capcom finally nerf Longsword? And of course, do Wyverians really lay eggs? These are all interesting topics in their own right, but there's one particular question that's enduring.
Homie is coming out of the gate strong. This might not have been the type of video I thought it was gonna be. Let's let the man cook.
Among even the most burning topics in the community's recent years. Is Monster Hunter getting easier? More often than not, this question tends to elicit one of two different responses.
Of course the series is getting too easy. There's way too many new mechanics that undermine and devalue the core gameplay.
Getting too easy? No. You've just played so much Monster Hunter that you've naturally grown more skilled as a hunter.
Not gonna lie, I am in Camp B. Camp Fiore. Camp Fiore.
That's why the hardest entry is always your first.
These stances are entirely contrary to each other, displaying two very different attitudes towards Monster Hunter as a whole. And the thing is, it's not really a new point of discussion for Western fans. I've personally seen the topic brought up twice over after both Tri and Generations first released years ago. But it's a topic that's grown more turbulent with the release of Monster Hunter World in 2018. Not just because World introduced so many drastic changes to the series' core gameplay formula, but also because it catapulted Monster Hunter from Capcom's most popular series in Japan into their most popular series, period. With the Monster Hunter fanbase ballooning in size practically overnight, there's more people than ever chiming into the debate, with the old guard seemingly at odds with the new blood. The answer to the query of Monster Hunter's waning difficulty is one that's typically broken down into these two all-encompassing absolutes. Either the series is undermining its long-standing difficulty with new features, or its players have simply grown too adept at hunting monsters. Only one of these answers can be correct. Unless both sides of this argument hold such an equal amount of weight that somewhere in between these two extremes, there exists another answer. Monster Hunter's difficulty is built upon dozens.
Keep wanting to pause it, but I also just want to let the guy cook still. I'm really curious where he's gonna go.
Of gameplay factors that have been refined and readjusted over the series' 18-year history, be it the minor quality of life tweaks or the more all-encompassing gameplay changes. It's a topic that, quite frankly, isn't often treated with the care and nuance that it really deserves. Okay. Through this video, I hope to show that Monster Hunter's difficulty is the product of innumerable factors inside and around the games, dispelling the notion that this debate has only a single, solitary answer, as well as showcase part of the reason why this series has grown to be one of Capcom's most profitable and well-recognized IPs of all time. Before we can get that far, though, we have to answer one simple question. What makes Monster Hunter difficult to begin with? Ryozo Sugimoto, the current series producer, has stated clearly in past interviews that your technique as a hunter is the ultimate deciding factor because Monster Hunter is an action game. Not an action RPG, but a pure action game.
Okay.
While the series does rely on a series of complex damage formulas and damage modifiers to determine every point of damage dealt, a deeper understanding of this system is ultimately secondary to your skill as a player. Monster Hunter's progression system is a relatively unique one in that your hunter's base abilities are completely static across the entire game. Even in games like
I feel like, wait, yeah, you might be about to say it, but I feel like games like Rise and I think GU had its own version of switch skills, or what switch skills were based on. Nah, kind of a moot point. You can scratch that.
Generations and Rise, which feature super attacks or new maneuvers you can unlock, your basic movement
Spoke too
options
soon.
never
I should
change.
just shut the fuck up and let him
Any
cook.
sort of improvement or modification to your base movement is typically a temporary measure you have to earn and equip, rather than a permanent, long-standing upgrade. The only difference between an evasive maneuver done within the first hour and the 100th hour is the player behind it. While the hunter's base abilities remain static, the series' monsters only get more powerful across higher ranks. As players gradually hone their skills and gain access to better gear, improving the monster's own base abilities is the series' main method of keeping its players, and therefore its difficulty curve, in check. The foundation of Monster Hunter's core gameplay, and upon which the difficulty has been historically designed around, is the player's own situational awareness and how well they understand the monsters and all options available at their disposal. In stark contrast to most other action games, raw execution isn't the sole deciding factor to success in Monster Hunter. Recognizing the challenge ahead and committing to a strategy that can overcome it are just as important, if not more so. Every other aspect of the series'
The old question of prepping for a quest.
gameplay is derived from these main axioms, be it the series' first
Goodbye,
installment or its most
Shit.
recent. This sentiment is even reflected and reinforced through various interviews with series developers throughout the years. As Ryozo Sugimoto himself once said, "The most important element in Monster Hunter is the action strategy between monster and player. Considering the way the monster is currently moving and deciding how to react is paramount. Always being aware of your location and the context of the battle is key."
I'm sure he's going to touch on it, but always being prepared. Always, I mean, you can obviously just cheese a game and not prepare for any quest. If you're a proficient hunter, you can get away with that for most of the game. But as a new player, so much of the game is spent running in, getting smacked, absolutely smacked by by the next big bad, the next wyvern, the next strong wyvern that you're facing, or the next elder dragon, and then going back to the village, going, okay, what's it week 2? What do I have at my disposal? What can I gather up to make this fight easier? And then doing as much of that as you possibly could, and then going back in again, and hopefully winning. If you didn't win, then you had to do all that shit over again, and it kind of sucked. But hopefully you won, and then you moved on and did it all again with the next one.
This rigid, deliberate design philosophy has resulted in an extremely unique difficulty curve, one largely dependent upon the player and their choices. At this point, I feel it's worth stressing that difficulty in video games is already a highly subjective topic by itself. What's most relevant to this video isn't whether or not there's a correct way in which Monster Hunters should challenge players, but instead determining just what contributes to that challenge. Generally speaking, your average video game will be designed around the idea of a gradual difficulty curve, steadily increasing as players either hone their skills or gain new in-game abilities. Give players too many options though, and it'll only get tougher to account for and balance around every potential gameplay scenario. This also holds true for Monster Hunter to a certain extent, and is part of why I feel it's hard for there to be a true consensus on the series' difficulty. Historically, Monster Hunter has always given players a bevy of gameplay options, affording them the freedom of choosing their own approach to monster hunting. Though this is more applicable to some entries than others, it's been true of the series ever since the beginning. Even in the very first Monster Hunter, there were already 7 different weapons to choose from, each with their own advantages and drawbacks. Every weapon's unique skill set gave each one different game plans to work towards, and thus different lenses to view the series' combat through. Proper positioning, timing, and knowledge of the monster's movesets were always paramount to success, but every weapon emphasized these attributes in.
Now, for all of the OGs out there that played like Monster Hunter, the original, or maybe Monster Hunter DOS, I remember I was like 8, I want to say, when this game came out. I was a little kid. No, I was 10. I was 10 because I'm 30 now, and we just had the 20-year anniversary. So I was 10 when this game came out, and I was playing it. And playing it as a 10-year-old, I was just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. Anybody else have that same same kind of experience with this when they were first playing?
In different ways. In practice, each monster has to be balanced around all of the different gameplay options at the player's disposal. This includes not only each of the different weapon types available to players, but also any new or recurring mechanics introduced in subsequent generations. But most importantly, monsters have to be designed to account for newcomers unfamiliar with the series, introducing new mechanics and the behavioral quirks of different monster types. This can easily be seen in-game with the inclusion of monsters meant to introduce or expand upon existing gameplay concepts, but it's also been outright confirmed by the series' own development team in past interviews. With all this taken into account, we've established that Monster Hunter's difficulty across the entire series.
Hi Ray, good to see you. We are about 7 minutes into the Is Monster Hunter Getting Easier video by a creator called Blue. And I feel like this video is probably applicable to a lot of games, but this one's going to be real specific for Monster Hunter. Yeah, you haven't missed much, to be honest.
Is contingent upon variables tied to the player's skill level.
Go back.
This can easily be seen in-game with the inclusion of monsters meant to introduce or expand.
Intro to Flying Wyverns expands on, I mean, I guess so, kinda. Rathian kind of expands on the Cutcuss fight a little bit. And then Rathalos expands on Rathian's fight. I guess so. Yeah, that's fair. I never noticed, but that's fair.
And upon existing gameplay concepts, but it's also been outright confirmed by the series' own development team in past interviews. With all this taken into account, we've established that Monster Hunter's difficulty across the entire series is contingent upon variables tied to the player's skill level, weapon choice, and even the monster in question. Even before factoring in a single gameplay change between installments, it's already clear that the series' difficulty is, by design, something that'll vary wildly from person to person. Monster Hunter is a series all about choices, with every choice being a different factor that directly influences the game's difficulty in some form or another. With the difficulty being heavily contingent upon a player's situational awareness, skill level, and ability to commit to every decision surrounding a hunt, not every player will face the same exact struggles as a hunter. Even in a hypothetical scenario in which 2 players bring the exact same weapons, armor sets, and items into a hunt, their own unique inclinations, habits, and skills could still vary tremendously, and thus lead to some degree of playstyle deviation during gameplay. That's the consequence of Monster Hunter's difficulty heavily playing off the human element. Not everybody is wired the same way. It's tricky to gauge just how hard Monster Hunter really is when a large part of the difficulty is derived from how players understand and approach the monsters themselves. Between players either...
I feel like the game can be as easy or as difficult as you make it out to be. Obviously, there's going to be hard fights. But, you can make this game significantly harder by just doing less. If you just run into every fight, balls out, you don't do any prep, don't take advantage of the farming mechanics, you don't do any of that shit, then it's going to be a way harder game than the guy that spends the extra 10 minutes before a quest farming up all of his materials and making sure he's got all of his traps and his potions and his this and his that ready to go.
Counterpicking monsters by switching weapon types, dedicated weapon mains remaining loyal to their favorite weapon, or even those who switch playstyles just for fun, not everybody is going to share in the exact same hunting experience because they're approaching the game in their own unique ways. Even the series' current producer has acknowledged this individualistic aspect of Monster Hunter's gameplay, ultimately recognizing and embracing it through the introduction of hunting styles and generations. With a series that derives challenge partially by leaning so heavily into player expression and the human element, it's inevitable that there would also be some monsters that players will just struggle with for entirely personal reasons. Maybe you're like me and just have consistently bad luck approaching Rathalos, or you're more like my brother who struggles with Zinogre's Paw Slam attack. Despite
I am not ashamed to admit that Fatalis pushed my shit in for like a week and a half. He beat the absolute shit out of me nonstop for a week and a half in World. I came in, I fought him for hours at a time, every day, for at least 10 days in a row before I finally got him.
Despite these being monsters we've hunted dozens of times over, and monsters you might not even have any issues with yourself. Player-based issues like these are why items, armor skills, and weapon matchups are so important. Every player can use these different options to make up for their own innate shortcomings, level the playing field, and eventually develop their own strategy to counter specific monsters. This isn't to imply there aren't other games where the difficulty is proportionate to the player's skill level. However, the skill that Monster Hunter asks of the player is less about sheer physical dexterity and more about developing the appropriate mindset to tackle the game with. The structure of the series' core gameplay loop, down to the inclusion of break rewards and 1% drops sometimes necessitating hunting monsters repeatedly, is all a deliberate means to further reinforce the growth of players' awareness, adaptability, and composure. Players who commit long enough to fully understand the unspoken rules of Monster Hunter's gameplay will eventually reach a point where the main mechanics of the game are seared into their muscle memory, and as such will understand how to work and prepare against nearly everything the game could throw at them. This all lends further credence to the argument that the series only feels like it's getting easier because you are improving as a player. It's the entire basis of Monster Hunter's difficulty. Generally speaking, the series is at its absolute hardest when you're a fledgling hunter, whose grasp and understanding of the gameplay are at their absolute lowest possible points.
Maybe. Maybe it's because I'm an experienced player. Maybe I can't speak on this really. But I feel like in-game is harder. But I haven't been a brand new player at Monster Hunter in a very long time. So that's hard for me to say.
There's a reason why, for many players, the all-around hardest Monster Hunter they'll ever play will be their first. Every entry is iterative upon the last.
That is very true.
Even World and Rise, both of which feature swaths of all-encompassing gameplay changes, are still built upon the same foundation as older entries. Once you have a firm understanding of the series' core gameplay, none of the later games will be as immediately challenging to hunters who spent hundreds of hours already fighting some of the series' toughest monsters.
Just a quick pause here. Shout out to a fellow man of culture here. I see you there rocking that insect glaive.
Monsters across endgame hunts. Starting up a new Monster Hunter game may involve starting with all your resources and equipment back to zero, but the knowledge and skills you've honed in one installment will seamlessly carry over into the next. You never have to spend time struggling to figure out which items and armor skills to prioritize, getting a handle on the gameplay basics, or figuring out which weapon clicks best with you. As a seasoned hunter, you now have a set of expectations of what's to come and what goals to work towards. Even if these plans can deviate slightly from one entry into the next, it's a blueprint you can generally always fall back on. So far, that sounds pretty much like a shut and locked argument, doesn't it? If the series' perceived difficulty is mainly owed to player experience and each hunter's individual characteristics, wouldn't that mean every Monster Hunter is designed and balanced to be equally difficult? Monster Hunter's difficulty is generally derived from the player's ability to understand and make the most of the choices presented to them, whether those choices involve preparing for a hunt or their actions during a quest. Every mechanic is so tightly integrated together that there are dozens of different gameplay elements that could contribute to the overall difficulty, no matter how minute they may seem. While it is very much possible to isolate and break down every last one of these different elements, it'd be about as engaging as reading through a list of publicly accessible patch notes. I think the less menial approach here will be to focus on just one specific design philosophy, which I feel is the linchpin resulting in these claims of the series growing too easy as of its 5th generation. I'm of course referring to the series' longtime focus on commitment and its emphasis on risk versus reward based gameplay. Every aspect of the series' gameplay is designed around the idea that you, as the player, are completely committed to your every action from the moment you set out on a hunt. This overarching philosophy could be felt practically everywhere in older entries, especially in the core gameplay. There's a very distinct weight and rigidity in how Hunter's controlled. A certain nuance to the core gameplay that even the most shameless of Monster Hunter's imitators don't seem to pick up on. Whether your hunter was attacking, evading, or even merely using items, every one of your moves had clearly defined windows in which you couldn't take any other action until your current one was finished. Considering that your hunter never moved very gracefully to begin with, challenge was derived less from what you did during hunts, but understanding when to act in the first place. This led to every player's action becoming extremely weighted, thereby leading to higher stakes and a heightened sense of tension during hunts. Those who didn't understand when and when not to take their action, be it as simple as healing or hefting a chunk of steel into a monster's face, simply wouldn't make it very far as hunters.
Okay, now hot take here. Yes, they did do away with a lot of the weight. Which, I mean, yeah, he's right. That was a core thing about Monster Hunter. You know, if you were going to heal, you had to make sure you were doing it during the monster's attack. You couldn't, dodge roll to the side, drink your healing potion as Rathian, I guess, was finishing up its attack, and then just walk out of the way of its next attack. You were locked down there until you either finished healing or you got hit. And now they made the attacks faster, so it's still punishing if you make a mistake, but you don't have to be as precise with it.
Concept of a free action, a move which could be performed at any time with zero consequences, simply didn't exist in Monster Hunter. Being held accountable for your every move meant that hunts were actively balanced out by a countless series of risks versus rewards playing out in real time. Kaname Fujioka has even touched on how this aspect of the gameplay is not only intentional, but is deeply rooted in the series' design. One stating that, if we're going to change Monster Hunter so that it basically features one giant contiguous area, then we have to really reformulate and rethink everything so it works correctly. And true to his word, when the series finally abandoned segmented maps in favor of larger interconnected hunting grounds, a staggering amount of gameplay changes immediately followed. Starting with Monster Hunter World, your hunter is no longer forced to commit to the vast majority of their actions. Where items once had to be used thoughtfully and gingerly, any misjudged item use can now simply be rolled out of to cancel the animation with no repercussions. The importance of timing and positional awareness are further de-emphasized by the fact that most items can be used on the move now, making it possible to merely outrun attacks without wasting an item. Items were just one part of how older entries stressed the importance of preparation, pushing players to plan around entering quests with only the items at their side and the gear on their back. This philosophy was then discarded after World's introduction of base camps, letting players restock items and change equipment at their own leisure mid-hunt. Not only is there now zero danger of ever running low on items or ammunition, but the unique challenge offered by multi-monster quests is trivialized now that you're not limited to a single armor set for the duration of the quest. Many of these gameplay changes introduced by World have since been labeled as quality of life changes by many, when they really aren't. These are examples of significant gameplay changes that directly affect a player's gameplay options, and thus how they approach the game on a fundamental level.
Okay, both of these things are not mutually exclusive. These can both be true, right? You can have there's a lot of things about Monster Hunter that fundamentally changed the way you did things, but that also just made it boring and grindy. Like, you may not pursue all of these different weapon play styles if every time you were going to make a weapon, one of the items needed was a 10% drop or a 1% drop. Like, you probably weren't going to do that. Some people did, but most weren't. They were going to commit to one play style and ride that out because it's just not worth it. Nobody's got time to sit there and grind out 1% drops for 13 different weapons. Some people had time, but you know what I mean. I feel like the same kind of applies here. Like, yeah, they're adding quality of life changes, but no matter what, any quality of life change is going to change the core gameplay mechanic. They're not. They're permanently intertwined. They're not two separate things.
Quality of life changes would be more linear improvements that don't exert notable influence over the core gameplay. The bulk of 5th Gen's changes have led to a new age of Monster Hunter in which players have far more safetiness and wiggle room to improvise during hunts as they see fit. The driving philosophy that every choice is final and must be committed to, and thus the difficulty born from it, has been drastically de-emphasized, with your hunter's gameplay options being wildly more flexible and versatile than ever before. Though World and Rise diverge in how that flexibility is integrated into their respective mechanics. World actively encouraged the suppression of a monster's options through features like the slinger, mantles, and increased map interactivity, while Rise instead focused more on further deepening player expression through its all-encompassing wire bug system. Any new and returning monster now has to be
I loved the wire bugs, I'm just saying. That's all.
designed and redesigned around each of these new mechanics, with varying degrees of success. Since the very beginning, Monster Hunter's core combat design has centered around reading and reacting to monster behavior, adjusting your offense accordingly. Every monster has their deliberate tells and pauses that give keen-eyed players those coveted windows of opportunity. This dynamic between players and monsters is yet another one of the biggest driving forces behind the series' difficulty, and is an incredibly delicate balance to maintain. At least, that was the idea back when commitment was integral to the series' overall design. Monster Hunter has steadily been growing more complex over time, but as of 5th Gen, this complexity has reached a point where monsters now have to account for 14 different weapon types, denser map design with more varied terrain, players who can easily and freely outmaneuver monsters at any moment, and even have ample opportunities to weaponize the map itself against monsters. With monsters still having to introduce new players to the basic rules of the series' gameplay, and those same players now having more options than ever before, that delicate balance has steadily grown more skewered towards the player's favor in recent years. Both World and Rise, being the products of different development teams, worked in their own countermeasures to balance around these new gameplay options. But the end result in either game makes for more of a kinetic hunting experience, rather than the methodical, slower-paced hunts of older games. That elegant simplicity of old world hunting has been cast aside in favor of looser, more reaction-based hunts, with far less restrictions imposed upon the player. None of this is to say there aren't dozens of other changes between World and Rise that streamline the gameplay, but
I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. Everybody harps on this like it's the end of the... Well, not everybody. A lot of people harp on this like it's the end of Monster Hunter. I mean... Nobody wants to just play the same game over and over again. We need the mechanics to evolve. Otherwise, the game's never going to get better. The game's never going to improve. And the game's never going to hit a broader audience. There's a reason, beyond just the advertising, that World did so much better than the rest of the games that the Monster Hunters had. It's because it was so fundamentally different. The base idea was and still is awesome. You know, take big sword, hit big monster on head. But the core gameplay needed to be more approachable. It was just, it was cool in its own right, but it just needed to be a little more streamlined to appeal to that broader audience.
I do feel it's the reduced emphasis on player commitment that most contributes to the relative leniency of these games, primarily because it's the impetus for these changes to begin with. Any changes that have come as a result of this paradigm shift have ultimately increased the player's margin for error, and as such, make for generally easier, more approachable games on a fundamental level. None of this is meant to suggest that World and Rise's gameplay changes are inherently good or bad on their own merits. Monster Hunter's gameplay is just so tightly designed that any change will have an adverse effect on the experience in some way, and 5th Gen brought several such changes to the table. It's really not surprising that most discussion of the series' difficulty tends to focus on these two games exclusively. It's not even the first time in the series that new mechanics have been scrutinized to such an extent. While many of 5th
Monster
Gen's
Hunter
mechanical
try.
changes tend to be blamed for making the series too easy, there was a time the same was said about Monster Hunter Tri's introduction of the fatigue system and mounting back in Monster Hunter 4. After all, both mechanics were ultimately a means to give players more openings to exploit and turn against the monster, something seen as unthinkable during the Freedom Unite era. It's important to consider that more dynamic gameplay features like these have steadily and undoubtedly given hunters more leeway over the years, but I think part of why mechanics like these tend to be given a bit more slack is because they were carefully integrated into the series back when unbroken commitment was the linchpin of its design. Every new mechanic or feature introduced was implemented in Counterbalance in such a way that they rarely undercut or trivialize the series' core gameplay, instead adding even more depth into the series' existing gameplay systems. Tri's fatigue system was counterbalanced by the existing rage mode system, mounting generally didn't afford more than 1 or 2 extra openings per hunt, and decoration slots opened up more possibilities for armor set mixing without severely undercutting the skill point system. That isn't to say every change in the old world era of Monster Hunter was handled flawlessly though. While ideas like vertical map design and mounting took some refinements to be properly realized, there's really no change more consistent and egregious than Capcom's infamous rebalancing of the weapons themselves. In a series bursting with so many gameplay variables, even the slightest change to a weapon's property can make all the difference between a weapon falling anywhere between ineffective to overtuned. These changes can be as simple as Longsword's abundance of low-cost counters and base rise, as complex as the bowgun customizability experimented with exclusively in Tri, or as unique as the new mechanics added to Charge Blade between the releases of Vanilla 4 and 4U. Given that your weapon choice already plays an enormous part in how difficult the game might be for you, how Capcom then chose to rebalance that weapon in a given entry is another wild card on top of that. These balancing quirks also extend to game-specific mechanics like switch skills, hunter arts, and styles, but seeing that I've already dedicated an entire video to those mechanics, I'm not really going to get more into them here. Trust me, that's not because I'm desperately fishing for engagement on my floundering YouTube channel. There are still plenty of other mechanics or aspects of the series that could potentially influence its difficulty, such as the improved readability of monsters, a game's quest progression and pacing, or even the inclusion of delayed wake-ups. The main reason I'm not going more in depth on these aspects, besides not wanting to bloat this video into the length of a movie, is because I think it's been made clear at this point that Monster Hunter's difficulty isn't strictly determined by any one specific feature. However, there does exist one other unique feature of the series that I don't think is often considered when this discussion crops up.
What the fuck is that, a fucking cat? Mom! Yo, there's a stray cat outside!
Starting with Monster Hunter Freedom 2, players had the ability to weaponize and arm felines of their very own and venture off into hunts together, establishing an extremely understated but significant element to the series' difficulty. These palicos didn't have access to the same weapons or items that hunters did, so the value in hunting alongside a palico wasn't in their negligible damage output, but that their very presence could draw a monster's attention away from the hunter, alleviating some of the pressure on the hunter by creating more openings for them to act as necessary. Even as this buddy system was further developed across subsequent installments, the series has taken care to ensure that your hunting buddies remain supplementary to your abilities as a hunter, significant enough to make a difference in a hunt, but not enough to completely displace your own actions and agency as a hunter. Well, for the most part. Fortunately, if you ever feel like hunting buddies are undermining your skill as a player, there's always plenty of room left over on the bench. In essence, buddies are one of the closest things Monster Hunter has to a difficulty modifier. Veterans can choose to challenge monsters by truly hunting alone, while newcomers can bring buddies along to create extra openings during hunts. In this sense, the buddy system is effectively Monster Hunter's equivalent of putting the training wheels onto a bike, but not necessarily in the way that you might think. Yes, the inclusion of hunting buddies is undoubtedly a means of letting players hunt solo without having to bear the full brunt of truly flying solo. But hunting buddies do more than teach players how to hunt alone. They're meant to acclimate players to the idea of hunting together. Multiplayer is more than just another meager factor in Monster Hunter's overall difficulty. It's the most important gameplay element in the series. It's no exaggeration to say that the ability to hunt with others is the backbone on which the entire series is built. Multiplayer is entrenched so deeply in Monster Hunter's design that it remains an undeniable part of why the series has even thrived to this very day. Mechanically, hunting with friends affects the difficulty much in the same way that hunting with buddies does. The presence of others will naturally draw monster attention away from you, offloading some of the innate tension that hunting brings. The key difference between them is that while hunting buddies aren't strong enough to consistently deal significant damage to monsters, other hunters are. Staying true to the series' original emphasis on risk versus reward, the presence of other hunters is then counterbalanced by the long-standing 3 feint system. Because any one player carding in a hunt counts towards this 3 feint limit, the potential for success and failure naturally increases in relation to the number of players in a hunt. This system further amplifies every mistake made by every player, with even a single card subsequently ramping up the stakes for everybody else. Keeping in mind that not everyone will approach the game in exactly the same way, throwing more players into a group together introduces even more variables that'll impact the difficulty, depending upon the group's size, synergy, and skill level. A reliable team of 4 hunters who can coordinate and carry themselves together will, on average, struggle far less compared to a hodgepodge team of uncoordinated randoms online. In either case, it's still possible to be the best player in a group and still have your hard work undermined by a series of misplaced cards. On the other hand, the inverse is equally true. Considering that the average quest across the series roughly scales multiplayer monster health to balance around a team of just 2 players, even a decently coordinated team of 4 hunters has the potential to completely trivialize even some of the hardest fights around. It's really telling that even as World and Rise modernized the multiplayer with real-time scaling of monster HP, the internal balancing mechanism which drove the multiplayer was otherwise left completely intact. The number of variables that affects Monster Hunter's difficulty effectively multiplies when factoring in the presence of other hunters. Every single variable applicable to yourself is just as true of your fellow hunters, in addition to how well each hunter can strategize and cooperate as a team. Given just how many variables
So, on this note, I think, personally, I played most of Monster Hunter solo. Most of every Monster Hunter solo. I would occasionally hunt with buddies. The only time I was playing multiplayer in Monster Hunter was to do SOS hunts to help out other players. I always found the game was much more rewarding to play solo.
already exist when playing alone, the variables unique to multiplayer make it tricky to tell if the overall difficulty is truly fluctuating or not. Here's the thing though, while multiplayer itself is the greatest variable in the series' difficulty, this variability is what Monster Hunter is truly designed and balanced around.
What?
Ultimately, Monster Hunter is a series filled with several balances and counterbalances working together to create an incredibly deep risk versus reward system, designed around the idea that you'll eventually work together with other hunters. Everything about the series, up to and including the ability to trip your own teammates during hunts, feeds into this idea of hunting and working together as a group. It's really not coincidental that hunting with others has the potential to both trivialize and exacerbate a large part of Monster Hunter's difficulty. Everything discussed in prior sections was originally conceived around the idea of hunting together with other people and fostering an environment where everybody's actions were equally relevant to their success or failure. Every core mechanic was originally designed to work in tandem to ensure that every hunter's contributions to the hunt are meaningful. Just as you share in each other's failure, your triumphs are your fellow hunters' triumphs. It's even possible that Capcom's focus on keeping group hunts evenly balanced is what ended up defining the direction of the series' gameplay, and not the other way around. Rather than being a more execution-heavy game like its Capcom contemporaries, Monster Hunter's gameplay has always emphasized a more methodical, knowledge-driven approach. In a more heavily co-op based game, the physical dexterity required to keep up in a faster-paced environment can't really be imparted onto other players, but the knowledge required to circumvent and counter the game's challenges can be. Though the series developers have never outright said as much themselves, certain developer interviews have suggested or alluded to this being one of the many conscious developmental decisions involved with the series. As the Ozo Tsushimoto himself once said, "It's very fair to people of all skill levels. Even if you're a newbie, you can play along with expert players and they can support you in playing along with them, and you don't feel like you're just useless or left behind." that can help you get involved in the game and then help you brush up your skills.
It's one thing I actually, although I usually use mods to track my own damage and where it sits in relation to other players. That's one thing that I really do appreciate about Monster Hunter. Is that it doesn't tell you, unless you go way out of your way to find out, how much damage you're doing in relation to everybody else. Everyone's just there, can't tell who's doing what. You can tell if somebody's not pulling their weight, because it's way harder. Usually if you watch for a second, you can tell who it is. But if everyone's just playing the game and not intentionally being a draw on the team or drain on the team, nobody can tell who's actually doing the most damage. It's just a nice part of the game.
It's that kind of communal play aspect that I think has been key to the series' popularity in Japan. Which brings us back to the original question posed at the start of this video. Is Monster Hunter truly getting easier, or are its players merely improving as hunters? As evidenced by all the different iterations of Monster Hunter we've touched on, the true answer should be as clear as it'll ever be by this point. However, when all is said and done, I feel that this question is ultimately an irrelevant one. Yes, Monster Hunter has unquestionably been getting easier. Monster Hunter World alone has fundamentally changed aspects of the series' core gameplay that make these newer games more approachable and forgiving than ever before. The series is now confronted with the task of experimenting with new, different ways of challenging players, as evidenced by nearly all of Iceborne's extremely experimental post-game monsters. The original ideology behind the series' difficulty simply can't be applied to the newer gameplay format as is. As a matter of fact, it's not hard to see Capcom figuring out this rebalancing process in real time. You ever noticed how many of World and Iceborne's late game monsters experimented with DPS checks or one-shot attacks, possibly balanced around the increasing prevalence of the mantle system and health boost? Now contrast that with Rise and Sunbreak's own late game monsters, which instead sport an abundance of follow-up and AoE attacks meant to suppress and counter your expanded movement options. These growing pains are a byproduct of a power creep that the series really never had to worry about before these specific games. But even prior to these entries, Monster Hunter was already growing more lax, evidenced by the many mechanical improvements made from the series' debut up to its 4th generation. Granted, it may not have been at the expense of the series' core gameplay design at the time, but these improvements nonetheless played a part in offsetting or streamlining aspects of the gameplay. Even Monster Hunter Tri, when it first released over a decade ago, was criticized in some circles for being too easy compared to Freedom Unite, thanks in part to tighter hitboxes, the new fatigue system, and the omission of G-Rank.
Everything was easy compared to Freedom Unite. Freedom Unite was a brutal slog. I had Freedom Unite on PSP.
In spite of the game also introducing more advanced, nuanced monster behavior, which would become the new standard for the series going forward. Regardless of which game we're focusing on, the hardest part of the series is when you're still discovering and learning all of the nuances involved with hunting. Nothing is ever really going to match the tension of encountering a T-Rex or doing an egg quest for the very first time, but that's no fault of the series itself. Monster Hunter has to spend time bringing newer players into the fold, just as much as it brings in something new for veterans to chew on. That's part of why endgame content like rare subspecies, advanced event quests, level 140 guild quests, and anomaly investigations even exist. Veterans can still push their limits with more difficult quests without completely alienating newcomers or more casual players. And I am aware I still haven't touched on several other elements that could impact the series' difficulty, like the
So he summed it up really well there. The sweaties are going to make it to the end game almost every time. Some people bounce out. Some people get salty. Oh, the game's too this, the game's not enough that. Those guys will always be there. That's fine. Who cares? But most of the sweaties, like myself, are always going to make it to the end game. They're always going to play through. They're always going to hit every new challenge head on. And most of the casual players, the ones who really pumped the game up to where the series up to where it is now, they're not playing to the, MR 150. They're not ranking their anomaly up to 300 to do the ultimate end-game bosses. They're just not doing that. That's for the diehards. That's for the sweaties. And yeah, it sucks that we don't get our part of the game until the very end, and usually until the end of the game's life cycle. But that's what makes the game so accessible to so many more people, because of all, every time for every 10 casuals that play through the story and then maybe do a little bit of in-game, there's one more extra sweaty player like the rest of us who's going to play through and max out whatever system is at the end game. They're going to max out their anomaly researcher. They're going to max out their guiding lands, or they're going to max out nobody's maxing out their MR. Only the real psychos are doing that. But they're going to get to the end game, the true end game, and play all the way through it.
Improved accessibility of in-game information, hybridization of Blade Master and Gunner armors, streamlined item crafting, the skill point revamp, wirefalling, prowlers, spirit birds, weapon counters, or even the inclusion of gameplay patches. But look, this video has to end eventually, right? It's a testament to the sheer depth of this series that there's so many relevant mechanics worth talking about. I think I've exhaustively covered most of the essential ones as is. And even besides that, is there really any meaning in covering everything else at this point? If difficulty was truly this integral to Monster Hunter's identity, then how is it that the Japanese exclusive Portable Third, unquestionably one of the easiest games of the entire franchise, was its best-selling installment up until World's release? It's because difficulty has never been the most defining part of the series.
If you want, I know this is still technically a Soulsborne, I think, kind of. But if you want that, this isn't the series for you. There's all of Soulsborne. You can play that. Just say.
Monster Hunter was originally founded upon the idea of creating a successful multiplayer game, and that's one of the reasons Monster Hunter skyrocketed in popularity to begin with.
Yeah, it's fun.
I don't think what matters in this argument is how hard Monster Hunter should be. What matters are the ways in which it does challenge players, and that the options used to overcome said challenges are properly balanced against the game's existing systems. I think part of this misconception that punishing difficulty always mattered in Monster Hunter is because the series has historically relied on using challenge and adversity as teaching tools. You just won't get past the skill floor until the appropriate lessons are learned. Yeah. Though these lessons can never be unlearned, they can be passed on to newcomers or those still struggling on their own hunts. And in time, those newcomers may become veterans of their own, who might even pass the same lessons to another hunter. That's how Monster Hunter has largely worked since its inception, in spite of every entry's idiosyncrasies and misgivings. While difficulty is still relevant to Monster Hunter, the games have always been built upon countless different features and quirks synergizing together to create an incredibly unique, one-of-a-kind series. Difficulty is only one part of that formula for success, not the key to the whole equation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with hunting solo, playing with friends, chasing after the thrill of a good challenge, or even preferring one style of Monster Hunter over the other. But this series was never about difficulty solely for its own sake. Regardless of where exactly the series goes next, Monster Hunter is and will always be at its most difficult when the games force you to learn and adapt to new circumstances. Whether you're a newcomer experiencing the series for the first time or a veteran experimenting with new gameplay options, that's only a small part in what makes the series so engaging to begin with. And in my eyes, that's what makes the series Monster Hunter.
What an epic ending. What say it? Oh, that was a super cool video. And it was by Blue. Go out. He's got 19,000 subscribers. Go out and give him a follow, give him a subscribe. I'm gonna subscribe to Blue. Super cool. Super cool video. All right, I think we got time for one more video to watch together before we switch over to some gameplay. So I'm kind of trying to decide, do we want put this one back down at the bottom? We're going to go to another oldie but a goodie, an old Because Science video with Kyle Hill.
This is why you don't want the ability to teleport. 6. Nice. Teleportation, extreme interdimensional mobility. Sounds great. We can all imagine what we'd do with such a power, whether it be good. Oh, I found her in a tree. Or bad. Oh, I just found this. But just exactly how we'd accomplish these feats is never quite explained in popular culture. And I think a big reason why is that if you try to explain teleportation scientifically, try to make it work in our world, it's a superpower I don't think you'd even want. Oh.
2 seconds, y'all.
What? There we go. American writer Charles Fort is credited with coining the term teleportation as the transportation of material objects from one place to another without traveling the distance in between, all the way back in 1931. Teleportation is now a staple in many forms of fiction, especially science fiction, and as a superpower, you can find teleportation in everything from Dragon Ball Z to Watchmen to where it's probably best known, X-Men. In all of its iterations, teleportation is incredibly powerful. However, I think that the realistic version of this power would come along with many potential problems and pitfalls that fiction never fully explains. First, what
Okay, my bad, y'all. This is only tangentially related to what he's saying, but when I first saw that scene with Nightcrawler in X-Men, my God, that blew my fucking mind as a kid. That scene was so cool, the way they filmed it with the smoke and him just bouncing all over the room. So epic.
What is teleportation? Well, we'll be considering the Nightcrawlerian version because it's so popular. This kind of teleportation takes effort and extra dimensions to work. The user of the power either sees or concentrates on the location that they wish to teleport to and then pops into and out of an extra dimension using it to traverse space without physically moving through it. I think the common sense interpretation of how this works is that someone like Nightcrawler leaves our reality and then rejoins it, like picking up a chess piece and moving it to the other side of the board. But this basic assumption is actually teleportation's biggest problem. Not a single cell in your body has known a world at rest. Thanks to the rotation of the Earth, you were born into cosmic speed. Sure, the Earth takes an entire day just to make one revolution, but you and me standing on the surface of the Earth are covering a lot of distance in that time. If you are near the equator, you're covering 40,000 kilometers or 25,000 miles per day, which if you divide the two means that you, me, everyone has a velocity tangent to the Earth's surface of 465 meters per second, over 1,000 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound.
That's not even counting our speed in relation to the sun, which would make it even fucking crazier and varied because you would be spinning around. meaning you would be going faster and then slower and then faster at some points. Anyway, moving on.
You don't notice because you've always been going this fast, and everything has. The air, the water, even Hugh Jackman. And he's down under. In this interpretation of teleportation, if you teleported to a dimension that smelled like a fart on fire, where you were presumably stationary, relatively speaking to everything that was happening on Earth, including its spin, then if you just pop back onto Earth, you'd emerge and immediately encounter winds 6 times faster than a Category 5 hurricanes. And the instant your feet touch the ground, friction would pull you into a tumble like you were one of those guys at the gym who tried to jump on a treadmill except it was moving too fast. Except, you know, your skin would be totally sanded off and you'd probably be dead. I need a Band-Aid. Thank you. That dimension was filled with just physical BAMF letters. Teleportation would be lethal if it did not take into account the conditions of the target location. So what if this superpower is just a little bit more advanced? Teleportation gets a lot less terrible if instead of dropping into and out of space-time as we know it, you reappear with the velocity that you left with, kind of like how Aperture Science's portals work. This interpretation of teleportation isn't nearly as deadly as the last one, though it could be if you weren't careful. Right now, we all have a tangential velocity on the Earth's surface of over 1,000 miles per hour. And the term velocity is very important here because velocity includes direction, but speed does not. So if teleportation maybe saves your initial velocity like portals do, then depending on how far you bamped, you might find your initial velocity pointing in a direction opposite of Earth's spin. This would be just as lethal as the first situation we considered, except now you'd find all the objects on Earth heading at you with twice the velocity. The simple solution to this teleportation problem would be to limit the distance of your jumps. You wouldn't want to blindly jump to the other side of the planet, and you probably wouldn't want to even leave the continent you're standing on. The Earth spins at the same rate no matter where you are on it, but if you move closer to or further away from the poles, the circumference of the Earth that you are covering in that time will change. Because of this, if you
Am I tripping, or would it being directional also work? Like, I'll have to edit this in post, god damn it. But like, if there's a circle, and I want to jump from here to here, as long as I'm facing this way, both times, it should be okay. But if I jump from here, then emerge here, going the other way, I feel like that would be bad news bears, like what he's describing. Or I'm just an idiot that doesn't know physics. Probably the latter. Almost certainly.
Teleport to a different location, the local velocity could be very different. For example, if I teleported from, let's say, Los Angeles to the North Pole, then when I got there, I'd have to hit the ground running. I'm staying on the same axis. Mach 1! I'm only fine because there's no actual ground underneath me. If you ended up where you were teleporting with the velocity that you started with, the distance of your jumps, just to be safe, would probably have to be restricted to just a few kilometers because of the discrepancies between local velocities. I don't think that this is actually why Nightcrawler is canonically restricted to just jumping 3 miles north and south and 2 miles east and west, but it would make sense. That dimension is just fire. Even if you teleport in short hops, even if you can match the local velocity of your target location the best you can, you still have to remember one thing. The Earth isn't just spinning. While you are spinning around the Earth is spinning around the Sun with an average orbital velocity of 29.8 kilometers per second, 66,600 miles per hour. The devil's velocity. If you pitted the Earth's orbital velocity against, let's say, the velocity of a supersonic rifle bullet in the 100-meter dash, the Earth would have finished the race in the time it took the bullet to cross the 3-meter mark. And this raw velocity is important because teleportation, at least Nightcrawler's, isn't truly instantaneous. Going back and clocking just how long it takes Nightcrawler to teleport an X2, the bad one, it looks to be about 1 second between popping in and popping out. And if that is the time, then by the time he showed up at the place he wanted to arrive at, it would be about 30 kilometers away from where he intended it to be. And this isn't even the worst part. Because of the Earth's curvature, if you really got a jump wrong or you took too long, you'll either end up in the atmosphere falling to your doom or in space. To really work, true superhero-style teleportation would need secondary powers, apart from the ability to jump into and out of extra dimensions so that you could jump safely. You would want powers that could help you match the local velocity of any place on Earth that you wanted to teleport to, and powers that would help you project the position Earth will be in along its orbit when you got to where you were going.
You'd have to be like a mathematician? Yeah. You'd have to be like you'd have to be as smart as Kyle.
Now think about it this way, do you really want to be the one without some secondary powers having to do decently complicated space-time coordinate calculations on the fly just so that you don't end up inside a fence or hitting the wall at Mach 1.4? I don't think so. Of course, you could be a little bit more careless if you didn't mind ending up in the atmosphere somewhere, but just don't forget to bring a parachute. Of course, we could just say that whatever teleportation is, because it's fictional, just deals with all of these problems. It instantaneously generates velocity, and it locks you into perfect space-time coordinates as you travel through dimensions. That one was just syrup. But I think the more realistic interpretation of the superpower doesn't come along with magical GPS and extra-dimensional thrust. Even so, I think there is a way to make teleportation something that you actually want. It just has to change from pop culture-y to more science and technology. If you could already teleport, what you would need is just some device that could rapidly do the space-time calculations for you so that you could jump safely. And games like Universe Sandbox 2 can already do this. I mean, imagine a more sciencey superhero turning to you and saying something like, "Look, by the time we get there, the Earth will have moved 50 kilometers with a relative spin fast enough to break your legs. Without this, we are gonna find out what a fly hitting a semi-truck feels like. Now take my hand." So cool. So, what? Sorry, see,
But that also means he has to stop mid-action sequence to punch in his coordinates.
this is why you do not want teleportation. Like Nightcrawler says, it's a very delicate and dangerous process that's even more limited than you think it is. To do it, you'd have to jump, like Nightcrawler says not to, blindly forward into space-time over distances longer than Nightcrawler can canonically jump, having to compensate on the fly for the position and velocity of Earth at every point. And if you got any of that wrong, you'd either end up falling to your death or into the sun. You may not want pop culture style teleportation, but if you actually did have the ability to traverse space through extra dimensions, science and technology, and not comic book logic, may make this power tele-important enough to be worth the danger. Because science. Dang it! Also, if you were trying to be stealthy, as Nightcrawler is often trying to be, without some backfilling of atmosphere where you left, like Nightcrawler does with his brimstone dimension, you'd create loud bangs, kind of like mini thunder, wherever you appeared and disappeared from, which would make it very hard to be stealthy. Also, I do know that Nightcrawler travels at hyper velocity through the brimstone dimension, which would help with catching up to the Earth in its orbit, but even hyper velocity objects are not traveling as defined, in military speak, are not traveling as fast as the Earth is traveling in its orbit, and you'd have to jump farther still than Nightcrawler's distance limit. Thank you so much for watching, Robert, and thanks to Matterbeam for their help on this episode. If you want more of me, go back to alpha@projectalpha.com, or if you sign up now for a free trial, you can get this show 2 days earlier than anyone else, and you can get a discount on all the new merch we just put out. Wherever you are, like and subscribe. It really helps the show out.
It is break time. I am going to jump off real quick. There's a restroom, come back, and we are going to play some more Monster Hunter
and I actually take
Rise.
a lot of your suggestions and turn them into reality. So do it. nerds.
All right, I'll be back. See y'all in 5 minutes. All right, we are back, y'all. Oh, and Bonnie's coming up. Bonnie. See if we can make some room for her. Come here, girlie. Get the old kitty cat 2 cam going on here. There she is. All right. Let me know if I'm too quiet compared to the game, by the way, please. Particularly during the action parts, because a lot of my settings got messed up previously. Might you spare a moment? Discounts, markdown sales, meow. You're not who I meant to talk to. Kagero. Found a FUB camp location in Frost Islands, yes? Elder Fugan has asked me to help set up camp. I'd hoped to begin right away, but we lack construction materials. Could I ask you to obtain them for us? Sure, Kagero. Given how chilly the location is, the location will be, warm materials would be best. It is a sub-camp, but would also assist in furthering your expeditions. So I need, sick! I've got all of that.
I'm having a sale.
Deliveries. Let's go. Thanks, Mr. Kagero.
Take care.
Good to see you, Hunter. Yeah, come to me if you need new gear.
By the way, in case anybody didn't notice, I finally fixed my ponytail. Aha!
Oh, it's you.
Forging decorations. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Looking sharp there with that pedal ace. It's time to step up your gear too. Blah, blah, blah. Hunting demon pedal ace. Let's go. That's what I want right there. Change equipment. Demon pedal ace 2. Oh, okay. I was already using the demon pedal ace. He just upgraded it for me. Well, that's nice of him. Get me some more damage. What else? What should I do? What's up, Miss Yomogi the chef? MrThumb, perfect timing. Did you do me a favor? So I asked my usual supplier to deliver some ingredients for a new Buddy Dango recipe. Except now the trade route to the Frost Islands is strung with all these stupid Azuchi and Baggy. Just kind of worried. So you want me to kill them? Yes. Cool. Easy enough. That everybody? We good? Okay. Yo ho ho, dependable as ever. We're good. Thanks, bruh. Master sushi. You don't have anything for me. Okay.
Hello.
Let's do some high rank.
What's this?
Dango duty.
I wish you luck.
Okay.
Sweet, a chair. Time to go.
All right, here we go.
Ready for anything. Let's go.
Grab Rosie. Now who's? Really? That's it? Great Azuchi? Okay. But it is master rank great. Or no, not master rank. We're not there. High rank great Azuchi. What's up, buddy? Oh no, you guys are dicks. Fuck you. Watch this. Zinc.
That's our target.
Damn right it is.
Thanks, buddy.
Watch out, Azuchi. Ugh, missed that one. No thanks. Nope. No! Dang it. I knew that was coming too. No. Oh, your little buddy got me. That was some bullshit. Help me out, Rosie. I have no mega potions? Oh, man. Oh. I didn't even look to see if I have new Kinsects that I can get. I need to do that. Man, I feel like the hitboxes are way less generous in this game than they were in World. Could just be because everything is a lot smaller. Get back here.
Get to follow it.
Come on. Straight up just miss every single shot. That's cool. Take that though. Oh, let them duke it out.
This just won't do.
Here they go.
Control. Bye-bye.
Got it.
I'll be gentle. Promise. No problem.
Where are you at? Oh! Oh! Shit! Ouch! Come on, Rose. We're not trying to fight him. I'm not gonna lie. I really, really like this particular theme song. For for the rest of the nerds out here that actually pay attention to that shit like I do. No, sir. Ooh, broke his tail. Okay. There we go. Whoa, that's where you went. No thanks. Oh, here he comes. He's doing his tornado deal. Come on. Hey now. Oh, really?
Damn it.
Man, I can't believe I just died to that.
I'll be back. Let's go. Yeah.
almost done with the Suzuki fight. I want to get in like 2 or 3 good fights before pit. That's the goal tonight. Ooh, what's this? What's up here? Hang on. The fights can wait. What is up here? What is all this? No. What? Is this? It is. This is on the way up to the shrine up at the top of the mountain.
Let's see.
Okay. And up we go.
Yoink.
Yoink.
Sweet.
Where is he? There he is. Got it. Okay. It's all 3 extracts. Right under his tail. Oh, miss every shot there. Oh, thank you. Oh, damn it. Still can't believe I died to a sushi. Man, what's wrong with me?
Stop begging for mercy.
And here he comes. Oh. Nope. Come on. Oh, out of the air. Ding. Come on, here we go. You're almost out. Oh. Jeez, this guy is tough. Did I not upgrade my weapon? Because it feels like he should definitely be down by now, right? Like I'm just teeing off on this dude. Ah. All right, I think I might have been selling myself some copium, guys. I was thinking I was gonna get 2 or 3 hunts in. But man, I am just dead tired. My eyes hurt. I didn't sleep very well. So I think I might call it there. I'm still gonna try to edit these and get them up as individual videos. I'm a few videos out at this point, so I think I should be able to start doing that now moving forward. I guess a few words before. Hang on. Kind of a few words before I get too far into this. Or before I get too far out of this. So, moving forward, I'm going to be taking I'm not sure exactly what direction I'm going to be taking this channel. I've been kind of working with it and playing with some ideas. Obviously, we're going to be incorporating a little bit of React content. I'm trying to stay away from things like drama and political stuff. I'm not really interested in any of that. Unless it's not so much people-related drama as like games industry related news. And if there's drama that surrounds it, fine. But I'm going to try to base a lot of the React stuff that we do on this channel around that. And then obviously we're going to play, you know, keep with the core Monster Hunter gameplay every day. Or whatever game we're currently playing each day. Just because that's fun. That's fun for me. That's kind of the point of doing this in the first place. But yeah, just a quick little rundown of where we're at right now, what we're figuring out that we're going to do with the channel. And what to expect moving forward. We're going to be doing more of the, like I said, we're going to do more of the React. We're going to, I'm going to try to curate more videos for that ahead of time. Like what I did today. We did the one Monster Hunter related video. That was fun. Super interesting. Kind of always fun to hear a unique perspective on stuff. This is, you know, it's a topic that's been bantied around forever now. And then one that's kind of not so much Monster Hunter related, but just kind of nerd culture related. Just fun, you know? Fun and relevant stuff that I think is interesting and fun. I think that's going to be the crux of what we watch and what we do here. I'm just going to look for stuff that I think is interesting. And hopefully there's enough other weirdos out there on the internet that agree with me that this shit is interesting, that they would want to watch kind of a curated version of it here on my channel. So anyway, I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Y'all have a great night. I'm going to be signing off a little bit early this time, and I will catch you all on Wednesday. Oh, last thing. In case anybody hasn't picked up on it yet. Normal streaming schedule. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, sometimes Saturday. Friday and Saturday are kind of interchangeable. It just depends on the schedule, what's going on at the time. But it will always be 3 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, and either Friday or Saturday. Sometimes both, but always one of them. Alright, that's it. Y'all have a great night. Bye.